Hi, everybody. This is Jim Adams. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the part one of our Site Midwest USA Open Forum educational webinar series. This series is called The Customer's Guide to Best Practices and Incentives. This webinar is designed to cover the how and the why of successful incentive program, from the abstract thought to the development, to implementation, to execution. Before I introduce our distinguished panel, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Vail Resort Meetings and Events and Allied PRA, for their generous contributions, because without their support, this webinar could not take place. If you're interested in sponsoring an upcoming event for the Site Midwest USA chapter, go to our chapter website at sitemidwestusa.com, see our 2018 calendar, and contact our co-VPs of sponsorships, Linda Schweiss or Mary Claire Darland, and they'll give you more information on how that can happen. Now, joining us today in our distinguished panel, and we're quite lucky, is we've got Dana Weaver. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Jim.
Yes, great. We can hear you. That's great. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dana. He is the Senior Manager of Marketing Services at Growmark. Dana was raised on a grain and dairy farm in southern Indiana. He then received his BS degree from Purdue University in agricultural economics, one of the great agricultural schools in the country, by the way. Dana started his 41-year career with Growmark after college. His responsibilities have included being a credit manager, an area manager, region sales manager, agronomy sales manager, seed marketing manager, and his current role, senior marketing services for the last 10 years. Today, he works with member dealers to administer sales administration. He develops and implements sales marketing and incentive programs. He directs a strategic meeting management program. He was awarded the Travel Advocate of the Year by the Incentive Travel Council, and he achieved Certified Incentive Specialist in March 2013. Dana's held a leadership role at Site Chicago from 2014 to 17, including being president for 2 years running. He was recognized as one of the top 25 most influential people in the incentive industry in 2016 by the Incentive Magazine, and he currently is a trustee on the Site Foundation board, and he serves as faculty for the Site certification course. Dana not only earns a living at our field, he also gives back to our field, and for that we thank you, Dana. And next we have with us Mark Street. He's an account executive with Merritt's Travel. So Mark, for 20 years in the incentive industry, Mark Street is a driven and results-oriented leader with extensive experience creating successful engagement solutions between companies and their employees, their channel partners, and their customers. Mark's skilled at developing partnerships that drive performance and better business results through unforgettable engagement and more effective meeting, event, and incentive travel programs aligned with their corporate strategies. He started his career at Merritt's as a senior travel director. He was leading teams of 100+ members and operating global business group and incentive travel programs for Fortune 500 companies, while overseeing a classroom training for newly hired travel directors. As an account executive, Mark has partnered with mid-sized to Fortune 1000 companies in fields including software, technology, food service, and agriculture to create successful meeting events and incentive programs. Dana and Mark, on behalf of Site Midwest and our board, I want to welcome you and thank you for your time and your dedication to our local chapter. Now, folks, those of you listening, you have a rare treat right now because Mark is the sales person that deals with Dana at Growmark. Mark and Dana have a long relationship, and they have promised us one thing today. While they're not going to hold anything back, they're going to give us their version from their company's perspective. So it's a great way to hear how our industry works, not only from the selling side, but from the buying side. And now I'm going to get into the questions, and we're going to start off with Dana. So part one is about establishing the need for an incentive program. Dana, the objectives for establishing an incentive program, why would a company like yours want to spend the time, effort, and money to start an incentive program when participants are already compensated?
Well, it's a great way to start off, Jim, because, you know, as you look at salespeople or anyone in an organization, I mean, they're compensated for what they're supposed to do that's outlined in their job description, correct? So with that in mind, they basically carry out their duties day in and day out. However, the idea behind an incentive travel program is to unleash human potential with extraordinary motivational events. I mean, that's a true definition of incentive travel. So if individuals are just carrying out their job day in and day out, if you want to achieve more and incentivize them, if you will, to do more, then an incentive travel program is a great way to do that. It's been proven that it is a strong motivator for performance, which in turn drives profitability for the organization. And in a nutshell, Jim, we just simply say incentive travel works because it produces business results.
There you go. I like the fact that you're using a line that you believe in and a line that you practice. Mark, anything to add to that on why a company should take the time to spend money and start an incentive program even though their salespeople or their channel's already well compensated?
Yeah, I just would, just like to add that, cash has no memory. Often compensation and cash gets used towards household necessities or to pay bills, and doesn't necessarily have the same motivational effect on program participants. I think both cash and non-cash have appeal and play an important role in behavior change. However, tangible non-cash rewards are going to, offer significant advantages, provide trophy value, social reinforcement, and it's just overall higher perceived value than cash compensation.
Great, thanks. Dana, I want to get into program structures. What types of criteria do you think should be used for measurement? Only dollar sales? Do you ever use any other criteria for people to be measured on in the program?
Well, Jim, it really all depends on what behavior or what discipline you're trying to achieve. So you can, if it's, say, a trucking company, for example, as we made reference to it in our certification course with SITE, we, it talks about how it's a team effort between the mechanic, the driver, the people doing logistics, routing the driver, and so forth. It's a team effort. So you can use other forms. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. Another common one for incentive travel, or becoming more common, is safety and security issues. So if you're trying to measure how many days have you went without an accident or people being off work because of accidents, that's another great motivator to incentivize people. It has to be relevant and achievable, though, Jim. If whatever you're trying to measure, if it's not relevant to what they do every day, it becomes actually a disincentive. And likewise, it has to be achievable. If the goal is too high or what you're trying to accomplish is not relevant to what they're doing, it actually becomes a disincentive, and you're probably better off not having anything than to have something that's wrong. But the measurement is really depending on the organization, the business results you're trying to achieve.
Dana, I really appreciate your candor with that. I'm sure Mark would agree with me that one of our biggest challenges are clients that want to put in criteria that really don't affect that day-to-day and can become a disincentive. Mark, what other type of criteria have you seen besides dollar sales that you think are really effective in measurement and bring back a good return for the client?
Literally, there's about any kind of measurement can be used to inform on an incentive program. Like Dana mentioned, it's some generally revenue and profits are typical. Companies can use any qualifiers like CRM activity, new accounts, specific products, sales, customer satisfaction, customer service, training. But in order to sustain growth, it's a best practice to give credit for all the steps along the way in the sale, and not just the sales themselves.
How do the two of you, either one can lead on this, but how do you answer the participants who say that criteria you're measuring me on, that's not objective, that's subjective? You're putting a fix in, you know. How do you handle that?
Well, I think you have to listen to what they're saying and really stop and look at what are you trying to measure. Is there an objective? Does the employee have, or the eligible employee, do they have the control to implement or to try to achieve what the criteria is? And if it's simply you know, one day one person is measuring something totally subjective, and the next day it's something else, it's kind of moving targets. So again, it becomes a disincentive, and people just kind of throw their hands up and said, I can't achieve this. It depends on what mood you're in today. So it really does have to be something somewhat tangible that you can actually measure, and the employee has the control over whether they achieve that or not.
Great, thanks, Dana. Mark, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say that, you know, the goals and the criteria have to be meaningful and measurable and attainable, and aligned with the overall business strategy.
Okay, great. Dana, what type of rewards do you think are the best? Travel, merchandise, cash, gift cards? What do you think works best with your customers?
Well, Jim, you know, everybody loves cash, right? I mean, who doesn't want more cash? And you know, we always say cash is king, and that's our biggest competitor when it comes to incentive travel, because people do want more cash. The only problem is, over my 41 years, I can't tell you how many times I've been awarded cash, and I can't tell you one thing today that I have because I got extra cash. If I went out and spent it on something, I just don't remember that. But if I go on an incentive travel program, like my very first one back in 1988 to the Bahamas, one of our annual sales program that I earned with Growmark, that I remember. I can tell you I went parasailing. We stayed at the Marriott on Cable Beach. I mean, I remember that like it was yesterday. So incentive travel is a lot more memorable. And if the goal was set up right, it really is meaningful, which translates to I feel good. I feel a lot of pride in what I accomplished there by earning that. And then it also becomes motivational, because once I earn one of those trips, I don't want to hear about it the next year when people come back and said, oh, you should have been in, you know, wherever, in the Caribbean when we had this program. I want to be there and experience it. So when it comes to merchandise, you know, you can use some merchandise on an incentive travel program. Actually, we do. We will use various product lines that people can go and check, select their own gift, either from a catalog or maybe somebody on site. Sometimes, Jim, we'll even give them cash on site that they can go use for their own personal incidental expense. Possibly, if we don't buy all the meals, maybe they can use that to buy meals. And on occasion, we'll probably use gift cards, although they don't seem to work as well for us because they're not always used. You never know how much you have left on it. But quite frankly, incentive travel is the one that's probably the most memorable of all those you listed.
Dana, didn't you tell me one time that you've also used gift cards in lieu of cash when people are traveling to pay for their incidentals?
Yeah, we have, and you know, when we do that, you just have to be careful. If you're in a foreign country, will the destination, the hotel or restaurants that are in that area, will they take the gift cards? Sometimes people look at gift cards as they're not sure they're safe from a vendor standpoint. So a lot of times today, we just got away from using gift cards, and we just strictly use cash when we're on a program, along with some merchandise. But the incentive travel is the one that really is the most memorable of all that.
Great, thanks, Dana. Mark, what type of rewards do you think most customers prefer?
Well, I think I'm in a little biased here, but obviously I would, in my opinion, think travel is the best choice, but especially for top performers. But realistically, you know, we know budget's a challenge for everyone, and I think the best answer is that it really depends. I think a lot goes into determining kind of reward programs, and I think all of the rewards that you mentioned, travel, merchandise, cash, and gift cards, all can play a role. I think it's ultimately, you know, you just look at what you're trying to achieve and the rewards you need to present to achieve those objectives. It's a common strategy, you know, to try to get the most out of the middle performers and enable them and motivate them with the right mix of rewards to complement kind of that top tier travel incentive. So you are reaching and engaging your entire audience and not just a small group of top earners. And I think, you know, if you segment the groups and reach everyone appropriately, you'll have success and sustained competitive advantage.
So are you, just to clarify, are you talking about multiple trips there, or are you talking about different criteria for different groups of customers?
Well, I think within, you know, it just depends on your audience and what's going to be meaningful and motivational to your audience. Typically on most programs, you know, they are a large, you know, there's top performer award travel, but the overall program, the biggest opportunity for growth is within those middle tier performers that have a lot of capacity to grow. That can help fund the entire incentive.
Okay.
But it's just figuring out the right mix of rewards. And okay. I think all of those, you know, play a role.
Okay. Hey, I just got an email from a listener. I'd be interested in both your perspectives. Dana, what's the shortest trip that you've ever offered your participants, and what's the longest trip you've ever offered? And what was the biggest difference and the reason?
Well, so we do just 2 incentive programs, and one of them has been going on now. We're in our 66th year. So, yeah, that's 2 sixes right next to each other. Yeah, started back in 1952, and that one used to be 4 days, 3 nights, someplace around the U.S. Usually from the us being from the Midwest, we would go south, Florida, California, someplace where it's a little bit maybe warmer in the December time frame. In about 2000, we switched that to a 5-day, 4-night, and we basically use all-inclusive properties in the Caribbean somewhere on that particular program. The other program that we have is 6 days and 5 nights, just one more day, one more night longer, and it's our sales and marketing. So, and we use more 4- or 5-star type properties for that, and go to places like Hawaii, Aruba, also in the Caribbean. But again, going somewhere where it's a lot warmer in the January timeframe when that program is implemented. So, but I hear people doing, you know, even like a 1-day incentive program. One example we had from a Crystal Award several years ago was just a 1-day, but it was, Jim, it was so high end. It was a helicopter transfer to a resort. You know, now that I think about it, I think it was a Lexus group, I think, that did it. And but it was just high end all the way, but it was just a 1-day. So you can accomplish that as well, and maybe for some clientele, maybe a 1-day trip fits into their schedule better because it's you know, maybe less travel, but you really have to so-called roll out the red carpet and make it very special.
Okay. And Dana, for some people who aren't familiar with your industry, that January-December time frame is important to you because that's when your people have access to travel, as opposed to the growing seasons and planting seasons where they're working 18-hour days, right?
That's correct. Yeah, from any day now, we say, especially early March till about late November, our people are busy taking care of their customers, helping them manage their crops and delivering fuel, those kind of things. So really that early December is, in some years, even early December is not a great time from home heating business and that kind of thing, but you just have to pick some time. And then again, early January is right after the holidays is when we take our sales and marketing program. And we could do that one well up into sometime in February, but it's been established now for 26 years that we're using early January, and people know that. They just kind of block the dates out and know that's when they're going to have to get away.
Gotcha. Mark, what about length of programs? What's the shortest you've been involved on and the longest you've been involved on?
You know, I think it's historically, I mean, it used to be kind of week-long trips and 5-night programs, but I think over the years, you know, people are busier than ever, and they've kind of condensed. I would say kind of the average incentive trip would be 4 to 5 nights, but depending upon the destination and the amount of time it takes, you know, and where your audience is, the distribution of where they're coming from, you know, we've seen them as short as, you know, 2 or 3 nights.
Okay.
But then again, it really, you know, like you were talking about, it depends upon the seasonality, it depends upon the travel time, and ultimately kind of how does that destination, does that award, you know, incentive award experience going to be aligned with the entire program?
Okay. All right. Thanks. We're going to get to part 2 now, which is planning an incentive program. My first question is, where and how do you begin in laying out the program, Dana?
So for me, it's whenever we're like in a CIS course and people bring up the question about we've never done one, so how do we go about setting this up? And I always advise people you have to start with who's involved in this, who are you trying to reward and recognize, and again, like in our case, you have to know what their travel schedule is like, when is the peak season for them. You don't want to take salespeople out of the sales territory in a peak season, so when is their downtime, what's the demographics of that group, and then the next thing I look at is why are you trying to do this, what's the business purpose, what are you trying to achieve, and then you can go for that, so what are we going to do and where are we going to go, and a lot of times people want to turn that around, well, I want to take a trip to Hawaii, well, who's going to be involved and why, and so it's like, well, I don't know, I just want to go to Hawaii with a trip. So that's probably the wrong way to do it, but I always want to start out with who are we trying to reward here and why what do we want to accomplish.
Okay. Mark, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you got to begin with the end in mind. You got to start with the goals you're trying to achieve, determine how the program's going to serve the overall corporate strategy, and outline kind of the metrics that really matter, and set, you know, realistic stretch goals for your participants. You know, reviewing the financial data and the year-over-year trends will really kind of help establish that criteria. And then it's just, you know, clearly identifying the objectives and focusing on the participant experience, you know, understanding what's really going to motivate them and impact the program. You know, and involving everybody who has an impact on achieving the objective.
Okay. Dana, I know you well enough to know that you probably haven't experienced this in a while, but I bet you did when you first took over for somebody else. What type of problems have you seen in regard to the initial program plan?
Yeah, and again, Jim, working with folks like in the CIS course and so forth, we always tell them it's you can lay out your program plan and tell everybody what's included and how it's going to be implemented and so forth, but a lot of times what we fail to recognize there is what's not included. Like on one of my programs, there are several meals that are not included, or or maybe some activities that if they want to do things on their own, that's not included in the program. It's not just, you know, we pick you up at an airport and we take care of every single thing. And so what's not included has to be explained very clearly to the folks that are eligible for these programs. And the other thing we always see too is that ugly B word called budget, that sometimes, you know, you say, well, I want to do this for $2,000 a person. Well, you can't take a 5-day, 4-night trip someplace and go to a 5-star property, provide all kinds of activities and meals and beverages and so forth, for $2,000 a person. It's just not going to work. And then the C-suite starts to ask questions. Well, why didn't we meet our budget? Well, because the budget was too low to begin with. So I think a combination of things there is making sure the budget fits the destination and the program that you have in mind, and make sure that senior management understands your expectations and know that this is the return on the investment that we're going to get from this, and let's make sure that everybody is in agreement with that.
Thanks, Dana. Mark, what kind of problems have you seen in your career?
You know, I got a few issues that kind of seem to always pop up. I think one of them's, you know, having earning structures that are real simple and easy to understand will help improve performance of the incentive. You know, we always like to segment and look at, you know, tiered approaches to incentive design to make sure that you're engaging all aspects of your audience. Another issue sometimes when we have customers that are kind of new to the incentives or decide that they want to do an incentive just because maybe their competition is offering an incentive. And in that case, there's a tendency for participants to kind of engage and earn 1 year and then, you know, sandbag the next, and then, you know, when their quota goes up, you know, they don't achieve, but then when their quota goes down, then they achieve the incentive the following year. So they really haven't really increased their purchasing at all. Another issue that we kind of run into is that just sometimes the program has been done a certain way for forever, and it's just, you know, this is how it's done, and we do it year over year, and it just kind of becomes stagnant. I think programs need to be continually refreshed. I think we need to look at, you know, the goals and reconsider, you know, adjusting them, you know, as business changes, and continue to make them, you know, motivational and engaging for your audience. And then finally, the one thing that we kind of, a common problem that we run into is we'll have an incentive program, and sometimes the attendees, they aren't even aware of how they earned it, you know, or there are segments of their customers that aren't even aware that they're involved in the incentive at all. So I think that comes down to just clearly, you know, communications and clearly communicating what's required and what can be earned, and, you know, keep that in front of your audience. You know, we always recommend to kind of announce that and get everybody's buy-in and engagement, and follow up with, you know, feedback towards achieving their goal. I mean, I think that's ultimately what's going to make it most successful.
Thank you. How and when do you think winners should receive their award, and what resources or tools do you use to make this happen?
You know, from my perspective, Jim, I think the sooner you reward folks for achieving their goals is better. In our case, you know, our year ends in August, and our program is like 3 months later. So that I'd like to shorten that distance up, but as we said earlier, it's just not feasible to take our people out of the country in that October-November timeframe. So we have to have that 3-month period. But it also allows us then to make sure all logistics are in place. So when the program does happen in early December, we're ready to rock and roll, and we've got the I's dotted and T's crossed at that point, and it hopefully comes off, you know, as a great reward. Even before the trip itself, though, is all the communication that takes place in early September, that they've earned it, the registration for the trip in late September, and then all through October and November. We continue to communicate with them with things about every 2 or 3 weeks between our incentive house and ourselves. We keep them in the loop that you're going on this trip, you've earned it, congratulations, and we just keep rewarding them, if you will, and communicating with them so they know that when the trip is happening and what the logistics are.
Dana, you led right into what I'm going to ask next about what does a third-party incentive professional bring to the table for you? You just talked about between you and your incentive partner. What do you expect from your incentive partner?
Well, they have a lot of experience, and you know, it doesn't matter if my current one or any of them. They do this for a living, and I have other things on my plate besides the incentive travel program. So I lean on my third-party partner here to make sure that, you know, tell us what's going to work, what's not going to work. They have a lot of successes, but they also have a lot of failures or, you know, maybe small things. But, you know, I'll come up with a crazy idea, and Mark will say, Dana, you know, that's a great idea. It's good to be creative, but that's just not going to work. And let me tell you why, and this is what we've experienced. And so I appreciate that, that experience that they bring to the table, not only all the successes they've had, but some of the failures, and they keep me from doing the same thing.
Great feedback. Mark, anything you want to throw in there?
No, that's good to hear. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, from my perspective, you know, our goal is always to try to be an extension of the clients that we serve, and we just try to help them design and execute the best programs and travel experiences to help them achieve those, you know, stated business goals. You know, we, as Dana mentioned, you know, can share best practices and increase efficiencies, and we have, you know, some teams to support their needs and you know, all the requests that are associated with operating these type of programs, and we just have the experience and knowledge and relationships that are of benefit to our clients. The two things I was just really going to focus on here was, you know, our event technology is an area that just continues to impact, you know, the design and how we engage participants, and I think, you know, third parties can help out navigating that and help provide complete, you know, efficient end-to-end management. The other thing was just how there's a growing demand where, you know, many companies are now spending time researching more modern approaches to motivation psychology and behavioral economics and neuroscience. You know, we have a lot of a demand for our experience design consulting and our Department of Human Behavior and Innovation that helps us, you know, help our clients bring better alignment to their programs and overall better programs and better results.
Great. We'll take a breather for a second, panel, get a drink, and I'm going to now introduce a word from our sponsor. Our first sponsor for this webinar, Vail Resorts Meetings and Events, would like to share a brief video with us. So thanks, Vail Resorts, for your continued support of our local chapter. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our final sponsor, Madeline Marusa, Vice President of Industry Relations and Global Sales Director for Allied PRA. She has a few words to share. Madeline, you've got the floor. Madeline, can you hear me? I'm sorry, folks, we're having just a little bit of technical difficulty.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thank you for unmuting me. Welcome everyone to the world of Allied PRA, and especially today our mountain destinations, DSC, that work very closely with Vail Resorts. We've been a partner with them for about 20 years, starting in Park City and then moving over to Colorado. One of the things that's new for us is we've acquired a couple of new brands. If you're familiar with Allied PRA, we're now 35 destinations strong, starting in San Diego in 1983, and we have now welcomed our newest partner, Destination Nashville. So think of our destinations listed on the slide below, and great job, Mark and Dana, and thank you for being with us today.
Well, great. Thank you, Madeline, and thanks, Allied PRA. So for those of you that's now tuning in, the first half of our webinar, we heard from Dana and Mark as we discussed how to identify the need for an incentive program, as well as determining the best incentive for their needs and lay out a program once the incentive has been established. This final portion of the webinar, we're going to be discussing how to execute and measure the success of an incentive program once implemented. So part 3 is about operating an incentive program. How do you think we best announce the program?
Want me to take that one?
Sure.
Okay. You know, there's the various ways that you can announce the program, and it largely depends upon the audience, you know, that you're trying to engage. An employee incentive is very different than a customer or dealer incentive. What's common in any case is going big with an announcement. You don't just want to send an email. The program has the potential to deliver, you know, substantial ROI, but only if you maximize the engagement right from the beginning, which is pretty critical to get people on board. I think doing a print and promotional piece is still doing pretty well. It's actually kind of more noticeable these days now that we are so digitally engaged with technology now. So I think that goes a long way with you know, sitting a print and promotional item, you know, receiving a box with from your company or from the brand you represent, you know, will really go a long way. Video is also really common still. You know, right now we do a lot of video announcements. It's becoming, you know, much less expensive to produce. And then also just utilizing social media, creating private groups in Instagram or Facebook is a channel that, you know, many.
Okay, I've seemed to have lost Mark's audio just for a second. Dana, do you have anything to add to this about how you announce your programs?
Well, sure, and we try to announce ours early in the earning period, the earning phase. So, which is for us again is in early September. So, we want to make sure that we don't announce it too early before the other program ends, because we don't want them to say, "Oh, I'd rather go to the Dominican versus, you know, some other destination that we're going to this year. So I'll just sandbag and wait till and take some of those sales into next year if management allows them to do that." But so we announce it early, very early in that early period of the earning phase, and then we want them to anticipate what the reward's going to be. So just imagine yourself getting away, you and your spouse, and then we go on and explain the destination. As Mark said, we use a video to help promote it because we feel that is something that they can plug into their device at home and share it with the family, that they are going to get to have this experience. And it's not just something that the qualifier gets at work, a postcard or a letter. They read it, you know, it ends up in file 13, and the spouse never gets to really see what the trip is all about. And so we try to do various ways of communicating how it's going out, and then periodically throughout the year, we will keep that in front of them, since it is a 12-month program, either through social media, which is becoming more popular with us, and how we announce it, and then also maybe a postcard or two, and then maybe some sort of a gift, you know, like a beach towel or something like that that will help kind of keep the destination in front of them. And we do those strategically throughout that 12-month earning period, just to keep them informed and hopefully, and again, anticipating what that reward is going to be like when they earn it.
And do you do closed social media? Do you do closed groups, or do you do to your general overall websites and stuff?
It's a closed group like on Facebook and LinkedIn. We don't have as many people connected there as we'd like. We're still working on that. We have I don't know, out of 1,600 people that are eligible for that December annual sales program, I think we have something like close to half the people connected. So maybe that's not a bad average, but again, we'd sure like to get that bumped up to where we have a lot more people connected on our Facebook site. And again, it's closed just for that annual sales program.
Okay. Mark, does the program theme need to express the company's purpose and values, or just a destination? How should the theme help to shape and plan the program?
Yeah, there's no question. The program theme is, and its execution is actually, you know, an expression of the company's purpose and values. For some audiences, like dealers and customers, the program may be, in fact, like one of the most tangible expressions of value that they encounter. Incentives really shine a light on what the company sees as the most important thing. You know, all companies want to grow, but how they do it and how they are treating their stakeholders along the way says a lot about the company, you know, and way more than kind of the About Us tab on their webpage will ever do.
Hey, Dana, how do you come up with 67 different themes? I'm curious.
I have a colleague that works with me, Kathy Haynes. She's also a certified incentive specialist. She is very creative. So I kind of joke with management and people even outside our industry that she's the creative one, and I just watch the budget and stay out of her way. So, but one of our programs, that one that's been going on now for 66 years, is it's called an annual sales program, ASP for short. But every year we come up with a theme for that particular program. Like the current year we're in now is Pursuit to Paradise. So it's got, usually the theme has something to do with, you know, trying to help them to be motivated to trying to earn it. Sometimes it's the destination is included in it, like Caribbean Celebration, Rhythm of the Bay when we went to Puerto Vallarta, the Banderas Bay. So those are kind of themes we use there. But the other program is called Mark of Excellence, M-A-R-C, contrary to what Mark Street wants to believe. It wasn't named after him, but it could have been. But MARC stands for Marketing Activities Recognition Criteria. And again, that program now is in its 26th year, and that has no real theme to it other than it is the Mark of Excellence, and then the destination is wherever we're going to. So, so that one doesn't have a theme every year, but this sales program does.
Okay. Hey, Dana, once you're on site, you a lot of times have groups of participants that really don't know each other too well, and they can feel a little bit awkward participating in group events. How do you create an environment where participants can feel comfortable getting to know the rest of their group?
So yeah, so in both of our programs, we always try to have the group recognition, whether it's an award ceremony or just the whole group together in a recognition session. And it serves the purpose for having a meeting, part of our program, so it can be tax deductible if we have enough meetings and can do it that way. But it also allows folks, like during the award ceremony, they see people going across the stage. I usually have 20 or 30 seconds of dialogue or some information about the individual, how they achieved it, something about their hobbies and interests, and then also maybe something about family if they want me to include that. And it just allows folks in the audience observing that person being in the spotlight for 30 seconds. Here's somebody that enjoys hunting and fishing or one year we had somebody that raised koi dogs, and I mean, after the award ceremony, people were flocking around this individual saying, you know, well, tell me more about this, and it was just a way for people to connect. And it was people from Iowa, Ontario, Canada, all over just saying, you know, getting together and getting to know each other better. And we find having that recognition up front allows people to see someone that has a common interest, and they look each other up then at another event and share those ideas back and forth. And we feel that's important for people to connect early. The other thing, Jim, we had a blinding flash of the obvious last fall that we really need to start using technology. And again, thanks to Mark and his staff, they got us started using an app on that program, and that really helps too, because you put the attendees on there, folks on site can go up or can look up the app and look and see who else is here, what company they're from, what geographic location in our geographic territory are they from, and start building some relationships that way before they even get to meet the folks. A lot of times folks will be repeat qualifiers, so this is maybe that one time a year where they get together and maybe with a cocktail or beverage in their hand, and they can actually share some ideas and so forth about past programs and kind of renew friendships that way as well.
Okay, I'm going to have to skip ahead because we have got some time constraints coming up. I'm going to move us into part 4, measuring the program's success. Mark, I'm going to start with you. Can a company really measure the program's effect, and if so, how?
Yes, absolutely. But to what degree, you know, varies from program to program. I think driving ROI and measurable value requires, you know, communications of the program expectations, a rule structure that is kind of incremental, goal-based, that creates an opportunity for everyone to win, and then kind of the right reward mix for over-objective, you know, performance and to complement kind of top performer rewards. You know, the way that we look at it, kind of year-over-year growth minus a company's like organic growth for the year can be deemed truly incremental. You know, for example, if a company grows at 5% overall for the year, the audience that was targeted in the incentive grew at 10%, then the incremental growth is 5%. From that, you can take away all program-related costs and then derive your ROI. I know, you know, it's technically, you know, we realize that there might be some other attributes for that incremental growth other than the program, but, you know, it's the best way to kind of measure. And honestly, there are a lot of other positive things that, you know, that are harder to capture, like employee retention or, you know, the inventory impact for, you know, product-focused programs and other internal kind of efficiencies and overall job satisfaction that are harder to measure.
Okay.
Does that help?
Sure. Dana, how do you all measure your success?
You know, we tried measuring the return on the investment, and our margin structure with so many products and so many geographies, it's just difficult to gather that information up. We tried for about 6 months to pull all that together and try to get a dollar number, you know, what that return on that investment is from a percentage standpoint. It was just so complicated, we actually just gave up on it. But what senior management tells me, and that's the one that approves the programs and pays the bills, so what they tell me is as long as there's a good value proposition, in other words, people think this program is worth, you know, $3,000 a person and it only costs us $2,000, that's a great value. And if it ever goes the other way where people are like, well, I don't really care if I earn this or not because the program, the trips aren't that memorable, they're not that meaningful, they don't motivate me, then we're definitely broke and we have to fix something there. But overall, we just, from our participants through management of the co-ops and management of GrowMark, we just see there's a tremendous value proposition. People feel a sense of pride when they earn it, and the morale, the sense of achievement is great. So those are the things that really help us measure our success.
Thanks. Mark, what are some of the outcomes of the program that can be expected, both tangible and intangible? You mentioned a few of them in your earlier response.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a few. Obviously, there's the tangible outcomes that can be measured, and some intangible outcomes like job satisfaction and just relationships and employee retention or customer retention. But I think the biggest thing is that, you know, it really just, these programs demonstrate, you know, that you are authentically valued and cared about by the sponsoring organization. And, you know, you can show the audience, you know, you're doing what you're doing to help them grow and develop as professionals, and the more they're willing to reciprocate over the long term.
Okay. Dana?
You know, the thing that I hear from our folks after the program and for several months after the program, they always talk about the memories or the things they did and the people they met. Sometimes, Mark will chuckle, we do some crazy things on the program that are a little outside the box. And so when we do that, people, you know, they anticipate that you're going to do something equally as crazy next year and creative, so that they want to be there and experience that. And so it's great memories. I had someone just about 3 weeks ago tell me the trip they took in January of 2011 to St. Thomas and the things we did, and they didn't remember what the name of the team building event was, but it's a thing with the helicopter and the tennis balls, and those are the kind of memories. I mean, 7 years later, they can still remember that and what they did. That had a pretty lasting impression, and we certainly hope to build those memories for years, of hopefully a lifetime for these folks, that they know they've been rewarded and recognized because they've done great things for our system and help us to grow, be more successful, be more profitable, and that's what it's all about. Is everybody is a win-win when it comes to incentive programs.
Great feedback. We've got some questions that people have been listening in have asked, and I want to real quickly, Mark, I want to direct this first one to you. What's the best way to approach a limited budget where the client says, I want to do something, I've got $2,500 a couple? Where do you go from there?
I mean, I think we just kind of look at the first step really is we just identify kind of what the overall objectives of the program are, you know, what's the audience, where are they from, you know, and then start, you know, that's all in our kind of design and proposal development. You know, we'll look at different hotels that are going to fit the experience that they want to create, and the you know, and obviously there's a budget, so it's finding the value with, you know, the two primary the costs are going to be your hotel costs and your airfare, and so looking at the demographic of projected or winners and determining kind of where you can get them most cost effectively to create that experience that's going to be in line with, you know, the effort that it took to achieve the award. The ultimate award trip experience has to be kind of in line with the perceived, you know, value and effort it took to achieve it. Does that make sense?
Thanks. Yeah, sure. Hey, Dana, how do you prefer to be educated on possible destinations, incentive destinations? Do you like when somebody brings a bunch of DMCs? Do you like when you get a hotel, sales team, convention centers? What's the preferred way you like to hear about up and coming or newly revamped incentive destinations?
So yeah, that's on the site index here. We just did last July and August. It just came out here late last fall. It talks about how people want to measure or how do you want to understand what goes on? What's the media that we use to get that information? For me personally, I like relationships. I love working with people, so I like to hear, you know, face to face or one on one. And quite frankly, I go to a lot of site events. I'm attending one here later this evening with Site Florida Caribbean, and just to get better relationships and understand some of the vendors that are there. They'll tell me what's going on. It's in a networking opportunity. You just hear what's going on in other properties and so forth. And then I attend a lot of shows too, like IMEX and again, a lot of site events, global conference and so forth, where there's people there, you network, and you get a lot of great information from those folks, again, face to face. Otherwise, just, a phone call or email messages is another great way to keep me up to speed. I subscribe to probably too many news feeds on the incentive travel side, but a lot of times I don't have time to read through all of them, but I hit the highlights, and if something catches my eye, then I certainly want to delve into that and find out more about it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna ask this last question to both of you, and if you just come up with one or two thoughts, that'd be great. How can you enhance the business meeting part of an incentive program? Many guests hate the part about the business meeting. Are there any things that you do that you can get more engagement and make them okay with coming to that business meeting? Either one of you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I can take the lead on that. So what we do when we look at the destination that we're in, we'll do things like, of course, if you're in Mexico, there's tequilas, the agave plant is grown there and that's produced there. So we oftentimes will have like maybe a tequila demonstration, how they process it. And we've actually had them bring the ball of the agave plant into the meeting room and chop it up right there on the stage. And then afterwards at a social event and dinner, we'll have maybe some tequila tasting, for example. And that's a way for folks to not only take in the local culture, but it also makes coming to that meeting a little bit more palatable because they learn something while they're there. It's not trying to teach them how to sell better or, do those kind of things. We found that doesn't work very well. We tried it. We tried guest speakers and so forth. We just find that people just go to enough meetings and events to hear that kind of thing. When they're being rewarded and recognized, they want to be rewarded and recognized, then education is not top of mind for them, if you will.
Dana, I'm going to steal that idea from you and put it into one of my next programs. That's a great idea. Mark, anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to add is just, and whether it's the meeting component or however we look at these events, I mean, these are, we try to create experiences that are, once-in-a-lifetime experiences that nobody could replicate and that, that are fun at the end of the day. I mean, it's engaging, people are engaged when they're doing things that are fun, and that can go for the meeting, too. I mean, any way that we can make it more fun and engaging and a positive experience. Dana always likes to, insert these brief moments of intense joy and, to surprise and delight his audience. And that's what really makes it, a fun industry and makes our programs more engaging and makes them more meaningful and memorable for the participants.
Well, Mark, thank you. And Dana and Mark, I want to thank you both for Site Midwest USA. You brought us exactly what we needed to hear today. You went into great depth. I would ask all the people that listened in your feedback to us, let us know if there's any other areas that we should move on this particular subject in our later trilogy series. I know I speak for all of you in thanking Mark and Dana, and we very much appreciate this. One last thing, if you give us some feedback, please suggest what's the ideal time and day of the week for you to have our webinars, because we want to make it easy for people to benefit from education. Dana and Mark, thank you so much, and we bid you adieu. Much luck the rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. We are signing off.